Hello.
Hello.
I have with me here the Mossad, the official or unofficial
Yes,
Israeli security forces.
yes.
Is that accurate? An accurate depiction?
Mossad is like a spy agency. Uh,
Okay.
they hunt Nazis and stuff like this. Real Nazis.
Yeah. One of the best in the world and one of the top five in Israel. Yes.
Yes, one of the best in the world. They say the Mossad is excellent because it learns from the best.
Ah, okay. Good
Mm.
to know. So, I brought you on to talk a bit about what's happening in the region in Israel. I don't think a lot of people know what has happened in the last week. We are on the 8th of April at the moment, and it's been a particularly bloody week by any
Yes.
standards. Could you just let the viewers know from someone that's like in the region what has happened in the last week?
Well, we've had multiple terrorist attacks. Um, we've had the worst one, I think, is was last night in Tel Aviv, um, where I'm not sure how many Arab Muslim terrorists have decided to shoot at innocent Israelis, just doing their shopping and drinking coffee in a cafe in central Tel Aviv. Um, uh, Europeans are familiar with these, right? They've had an introduction course into this type of
Uh,
behavior.
I can't say that they have. I'm not sure if the young ones at the very least have.
Well,
Let's assume no.
they had the Manchester bombing. They had the uh, Bataclan in Paris, the nightclub that was attacked. People were being tortured and mutilated. They've had the London Bridge attack. They've had a few in the UK, in France, in Germany. So they've had an introductory uh, course into this. The interesting thing, which I'm sure some people in the West it will sound familiar to them, is that when Israelis are attacked, it doesn't really make the news. But if a Palestinian is scratched, the whole world is at a standstill. BBC send their best reporters. They make sure that they are wearing protective gear to emphasize how dangerous the situation is. But if Israelis are attacked, murdered, tortured, kidnapped, this barely makes the news. So yeah, we've had 4 attacks. I'm not sure of the number of dead. I think
I
there
think the
was
last one,
5 and 2, and yeah, the last one. How many?
the last one is three. There was two,
Yeah.
and then one today
Mm.
succumbed to his wounds.
Yeah,
It's the,
and the thing is, a lot of people are permanently injured, blinded, all sorts of things like this. This is it's called terror because it's designed to terrorize. It's designed to intimidate us. And the
ho-
world media is doing its part in the attack by not reporting it, so that when we try to defend ourselves, we appear like crazy people.
okay, so let's ask about that. How are people feeling in the region, and are there any plans to do anything about what's been happening?
Well, whenever something like this happens, you get the usual voices saying, flatten Gaza, do all this, aggressive reactions. But Israeli politicians are a bit wiser than that, and they understand the geopolitical game, and they understand that overreacting will just create more problems. So they try to navigate this as best they can. No matter what they do, half the Israeli public will be unhappy. It's not clear that there's a solution. There's no solution. The attempts of the world to intervene and impose all sorts of settlements, just, in my opinion, makes things worse. In fact, Western involvement and Western media are part guilty of the death that's happening for both sides.
How is that?
Well, by the way they're reporting, they are causing, they are underreporting Islamist and Arab crimes and over-reporting Israeli responses to those crimes.
So that
so
encourages them to do more.
it encourages the Arabs to attack more. Absolutely, yeah. It gives them hope. It makes them think, oh, if we carry on, he will do something. But they've been doing it for 100 years and it's been doing nothing. And the West just encourages them. It justifies them. The media justifies them, gives them excuses, uses all sorts of slogans like apartheid and stuff like this to encourage them. Some of these people that have been doing these attacks, they're Israeli citizens, which means that they have full rights as an Israeli to do whatever they want.
So these aren't people that smuggled across the border. These are Israeli citizens. Oh,
It's
most
a mix.
of them, or
I think
mix,
it's
okay.
no, it's a mix. And I don't know the latest count, but I know that it's generally a mix. There are Israeli citizens who are Arab Muslims who don't feel that they want to live under an Israeli state, and they are, they've been doing this sort of stuff for decades. I think the majority of the Arab population in Israel, who are Israeli citizens, actually want to live a peaceful life. So I don't think they support this sort of stuff. I think it's a minority. It's a large minority, but it is a minority that's making life difficult for everyone else. Because I've Arab friends and colleagues and people I work with. That's the last thing they want. It doesn't make their life any better.
No. Do you think the Israeli Arabs in particular were radicalized in any way, or were they just always
Absolutely.
like this?
No, they were radicalized. They were not always like this. It's definitely in my opinion, there's like a pincer effect. There's on one side, there's the Islamist agenda. They're telling them, oh, this is Islamic land. You must, kind of fanatic, hardcore Islamist agenda from one side. And from the other side, you get the Western, my human rights, human rights. You don't have human rights. But it's all nonsense in this region anyway. Not applicable. So that just makes them feel like they are some sort of, they've been screwed and they have to fight for their freedom and all that sort of stuff. But the reality is that they will never have more freedom than they have under Israeli rule. Because history shows us that Arab countries are never free. They're either a dictatorship or a Muslim
theocracy.
Yeah. So if they're actually talking about human rights and freedom, Israeli Arabs are the freest Arabs in the Middle East. The only place that can compete with this level of freedom is America, Canada, Britain, places like this. They don't get it in their home countries, but they do get it in Israel.
So most are happy with the conditions they have in Israel. By the way,
I think so. When I speak to Arabs, I try to understand them, right? I know a few people personally, but then you think, okay, the people I know personally will not be a good sample, right? Because they tend to be more educated, more involved in business and in Israel and so on. So I try to talk to all sorts, and try to understand. I walked into a shop that was owned by an Arab family just to buy some sweets and stuff like this, and the guy was there on his own, and I started chatting with him and asked him, tell me, between us, you can tell me if you're not happy, I'm not a spy or anything. I'm just curious.
Did
tell
you
me
wink
what
while
you
doing
think. Yeah, I winked while doing it. So tell me, what do you think? I said, because I was away from Israel, so I told him, look, I haven't been here for a few years. I'm trying to understand the vibe, So he said to me, man, this is the best country on earth. I would never change.
Interesting.
So, yeah. He says, look, my family is here, my life is here, it's a good country, we're treated well. It's like, that's what he said. He was a Christian in Haifa. I asked him, are you Muslim Christian? He said he's Christian.
Oh, Arab Christian.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was just, I just try to ask people. Generally, this is the vibe I get from from the Arab population. It's probably a majority, but it's not a massive majority that feels this way. I think it depends. Like if you are a person that wants to learn a profession or some skill and you want to get on in life, then Israel is a very good place to do it. Arab citizens go to study and become doctors or engineers or whatever. So they do quite well financially. It's not like they're in some kind of a hardship. The ones that make an attempt, I'd say there's a bit of what do you call it? They have a word for it, reverse racism, or they have a fancy name for it in America, where they promote minorities. I think in Israel they do the same thing. So if you're
diversity,
yeah, a little bit of that. So if you're an Arab from a poor background,
I think I know what you mean.
Affirmative action. That's
affirmative action. Yeah.
So if you're an Arab from poor family or from poor background, you'll be kind of pushed along. Kind of helped to get on the ladder, as they say. So
yeah, I remember sitting in a taxi in Israel, I think about a few years ago, and I just come from the UK, and I heard on the news that there was something, and they're complaining about it, that minorities like Arabs don't have enough representation in something, and it just sounded very familiar in like England and in America. It's just the same kind of.
So all these talking points are being brought to Israel from the West, and they are poisoning the atmosphere. They're creating tension between different communities in Israel. So it seems to me that outside forces are trying to play on the divisions in Israeli society in order to undo the society. And I feel they're doing the same to British society. They're doing the same in the West. And there are different organizations around the world that would benefit from that, from a weak West. Like Putin,
Can
for
you
example.
expand on that one?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Putin right now would be obviously happier. The weaker the West is, the better it is for him. The Chinese in a similar position. The Muslim Brotherhood, Iran. Lots of countries and various organizations don't like the fact that the West is strong and kind of in charge of the situation.
I see. I don't think the West can be any less strong in the case of Russia and Ukraine at the moment. I think with regards to sanctions, okay. But I don't know if it's necessarily like a firm grip on the situation. Maybe we shouldn't move topic really, but
I think in general, your enemies will be happier if your society is divided, right? It just makes it makes it harder for you to reach decision. If your society is divided, if the politicians are not divided and they can't agree on anything, then it's a good time to attack you. It's a good time to try and push you around, because you start arguing about everything. You can't decide what to do because everybody's divided. So, I mean, it's an old strategy. It's not a new thing. Causing divide and conquer is exactly. So divide the society. So in Israel, you've got the Arabs and the Jews. Then you've got, among the Jews, you've got the religious Jews versus the secular Jews. So create division between them, and so on. Just play on those things. That it keeps us busy arguing amongst ourselves instead of keeping an eye for our real enemies.
Can I ask on a slightly different topic? So, the current political situation in Israel in terms of the government. Not sure if everyone knows, and I don't know if I can describe it very well, but for the longest time there was a different prime minister called Bibi Netanyahu, and he was there for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was, I think, about 3 or 4 elections that were not enough votes to change the government, or that either side didn't have enough votes, because the situation there isn't that there's 2 political parties, there's something like 8 or 9, I'm not sure. and no one can.
Endless number of political parties.
Endless number of
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, everybody and their dog have a political party in Israel, but there's about 6 to 8 that are really the kind of the big blocks in parliament, or as we call it, Knesset in Israel. It's like a parliament, same thing.
Yeah, and currently now there's like a very maybe weak union or unstable union between a number of political parties, particularly originally designed to take control from Bibi, right?
It's a completely ridiculous government. It's a coalition between far right, far left, and everyone in the middle. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. They disagree about every little thing. I mean, they can't agree over anything, really. In principle, you've got people there who are, hardcore religious, and you've got hardcore atheists. You've got far leftists. They want to break up the family, and what's her name, Michaeli? She believes the family is the worst thing on earth. And you've got people there who believe that the family is the basis and foundation of our society, and so on. You've got people there who believe that we should retreat and give the land back. They call it back to the Arabs, and there are people there who believe that the land is ours and God has given it to us, and there's no way. How can they sit in one government? The one thing they have in common is that they all hate the previous PM, and it's a personal hate. It's nothing to do with his success or failure as a politician. In my opinion, anyway.
I was just wondering, if the previous prime minister was there, he probably would have taken some decisive action with regards to the recent terror attacks, but it seems that this government finds that more difficult, or they're arguing over should there be baked goods in hospitals or something during Passover.
Exactly the point I was making earlier. If you have that kind of government who can't decide on anything big, then they'll be busy about which type of sellotape to use when they wrap their gifts or something. That they'll have arguments about that, because on the big things there's no way they can agree, so they can't do anything. So it's a government of paralysis. It was imposed on us, really, on the Israeli population. Nobody voted for this government. If you just counted the Jewish vote in Israel, then it's very, very clear who won the election.
Who's that?
Netanyahu. He wins every election for the last 20 years if you just do the Jewish vote.
Sorry, you mean the Arab vote changed the outcome?
Yes, of course, yeah.
What is the percentage of the population?
It's about 20% is Arab, and they tend to vote left. Very few of them vote for the mainstream, yeah. So they tend to vote left for their own, far left.
They don't vote for the Arab parties?
They do, but the Arab parties tend to be left-wing, and if they don't vote for the Arab parties, they tend to vote for left-wing secular parties. So they never vote... Sorry,
when you say left-wing Arab parties, aren't Arab parties, or some of them, aren't they more religious/conservative to be called left-wing?
They are, but they have it's the Muslim Brotherhood type thing. So they have it's a mix of they are conservatives on some things and very left-wing on other things. It's because they don't really fit this left-right spectrum, which is Western. But if you try to do it, then I would put them on the left. They want to dissolve. In terms of Israeli politics, they are conservative religiously, but they are anti-borders. Right? They want
one state, yeah?
Yeah, they want one state for the whole world, and they want that state to be Muslim. So,
a caliphate.
Yes, and they are very much for charity and a lot of left-wing agenda. They are with them. So they are for social benefits and all that sort of stuff.
If I can summarize, you're saying they want one global government,
yes,
and left-wing policies.
Left-wing when it comes to economic and economy and some social issues, they are very left-wing. So unless if you're a left wing, if you don't know what to ask them, they'll just say to you, "Oh yeah, we agree with you." You see what I mean? They will be in agreement with the left winger about many things.
Okay.
And that's why they got along with Obama. The Muslim Brotherhood and Obama got along very well.
Okay. I wanted to talk about.
I just wanted to say something before that.
Yeah.
You said about Netanyahu's reaction to what is happening. If
Yes.
Trump was president and Netanyahu was prime minister, I don't think this would have happened in the first place.
Why do you say that?
Because just their presence is intimidating.
I see. Okay. The
So
threat of force.
yeah, so you will have attacks, but there will be fewer, and there'll be on the whole there'll be fewer people dead on both sides if Trump was president and Netanyahu was prime minister. And we had it tested when they were in power. There were fewer cases like this, so we know. Now, since Biden came in, we've had conflict in Gaza. We've had all these terrorist attacks. We've had the riots in the streets. We've had Jewish synagogues burnt in Israel. Lebanon is in turmoil. It's falling apart completely, but the media don't care. They don't report it because Jews are not involved. As soon as they can blame Jews, then Lebanon will be in the news again. And yeah, I mean, that's how it works, sadly. That's how the media operates. You see, thousands can die in Lebanon, nothing, no mention in the news. But wait till one of them dies because of an Israeli bullet, then it will be in the news.
What is happening in Lebanon that is causing people to die? What's going on?
There's Iran, Syria, Hezbollah, which is a proxy of Iran, the Christians fighting for whatever they got left, the Palestinian refugees there. It's a mess. It's been civil war since the 70s, and it's at the moment it's getting worse. Last time people heard about it, it was this massive explosion they had in the port, where all the weapons that had been piling up suddenly exploded. Netanyahu warned the world about the weapon storage in Beirut port, but nobody cared. So there you go, it exploded. But
Someone
if you go and look
at
what's going on, sorry.
Someone lit a cigarette while on duty or something?
I don't know. I forget what the reason was, but I think they held lots of explosives in a place they shouldn't have. So Lebanon is not a real country. It never was, but now it completely isn't. I mean, even the Lebanese army and the Lebanese police don't control the country. So it's just a wild west.
Can you expand on? And I don't think the viewers here will understand intuitively, but there's a sort of like language or currency in the Middle East, and that is kind of like strength. And once you show strength, it like stabilizes the region.
Yeah.
And people don't start fights. I don't think people will intuitively understand. It's very difficult also for people from the West to understand.
I think it's difficult because they're disconnected from reality. It's the same in Europe. They just don't realize it. The only reason they have nice life and peace in Europe is because they are strong. And as soon as they won't be strong, they won't have it anymore. They just don't understand it. Nobody dare attack you. Nobody, you know, do you think people don't want the wealth of Paris? Do you think there are no thieves in the world that would be happy to come and rob Paris? Of course there are. But, you know, the French have an army, they have a police, they have a whole system designed to protect what's theirs. But if they don't have it, then sooner or later someone is going to come and take it. Just the way of the world. And in the Middle East, it's very much like that. If you want peace in the Middle East, Muhammad explains exactly how to have peace in the Middle East, which is to be so strong that nobody dare attack you. Then you'll have peace.
I think also there's like this element where people constantly try to test if your strength has gone down.
Yes.
Like they won't just accept it. They'll every once in a while test it, and if it's just sad in a sense. But if you don't react if you don't overreact in a sense, it will be worse than reacting not reacting or reacting very weakly in quotations.
Yes, the trick in the Middle East is to react in a smart way, not overreact, not underreact, and you have to live in the region and know who you're dealing with in order to gauge what you should do at each time. And I don't know if Israel always gets it right either, but we definitely get it better than Israelis. Definitely get it better than Europeans or Americans. Or I don't know. I don't even know if they have maps in American schools anymore.
Oh, of the region, they don't know where it is on the globe.
They don't really. Yeah, they don't really have a. You can learn something and you can have a feel for it. It's two different things. Where
I see.
I can learn lots of stats about America, but it's only if you go and live in America and that you get a sense of what it's like, and it's the same for any place.
I remember in high school, my teacher said that Germany they asked children or teenagers in Germany to say how big Israel is, and at the time it was very frequently in the news, so they thought it was a massive landmass, like twice as big as Germany, because they heard it so often.
People are still shocked when I tell them that the distance from Tel Aviv to the border is like 2-3 miles. They don't get it. The country is like 10-20 miles wide. It only gets to about 50 miles or something like this. Its widest point.
Yeah, I think it's like 45-minute drive between east and west, and 8 hours between north and south.
It's less. So if you go
less?
from the shore, from the Mediterranean shore, to Kfar Saba, that's about 5-6 miles, and then another 3-4, you reach the border.
Okay.
That's the narrowest point, and Kfar Saba is northern Tel Aviv. Really, it's like the northern edge of Greater Tel Aviv. It's like the main metropolitan area. The airport is near the border as well. Israel is a very small place. They just don't get it. It's very narrow, and it's very hard to defend a very narrow strip of land.
Very crowded, apparently. Well, there's still desert parts, but like in other parts, it's more crowded.
Yes, but of course we keep hearing in the news that Gaza is the most densely populated place in the world. That is just a lie. That's so easy to disprove. I don't know why nobody just checks.
I heard it's an open-air prison.
Yeah, it's an open-air prison, yes.
It's well ventilated.
Well ventilated. But the claim that it's the most densely populated place on Earth is just plainly false. It isn't even close to being the most populated place on Earth. I think Tel Aviv is more dense. Paris and London are definitely more dense. So I don't know where they got this stat from and why journalists keep repeating it, but it sounds good. And it's anti-Israel.
It does play well, yeah.
Yeah, it's anti-Israel, so we'll take it. That's the journalist attitude.
I think the last time I heard it said on the Young Turks, when they were the issues on Gaza, when like there was a very thin fence there, and this was I think before, like there was a lot of things happened after that, but I think it was only a few years ago. But kids were like throwing rocks to the other side, and they were then I'm not sure if they were throwing rocks and like incendiary balloons at some point, and then Israel on the other side had these drones that would drop like some kind of tear gas. Did you know what I mean?
Yes, I know. I don't remember the details though. I don't know exactly which specific event. That was like over 10 years ago, I think.
Oh, so it's okay. So ignore me.
I think I'm there's so much going on there, so I don't know which. You mean when Trump came in, then they marched they had this march on the border. Do you mean that one?
Yeah, there was a part of the border that was very thin, like the fence was very thin. Other parts was. Yeah.
So there was a plan to basically march through the border into the nearest Israeli towns and start massacring people. They had tunnels that fed right into dining halls, schools in nearby villages and towns in Israel. And they had a plan where they're going to go through the tunnels and people will come from through the border as well, and there'll be thousands of people swarming these Israeli towns. That was the idea, and they said it was a protest,
Yes,
a bit like a BLM
yeah.
protest, fiery but peaceful.
Okay, I'm sure my viewers would appreciate that comparison.
Yes.
What happened in the end? Like, it just died down, or it got worse, or?
Well, there's nothing they can achieve. The whole thing is a show for Western media, right? There is nothing that they can achieve. Israel, from being a completely powerless country that was about to collapse on itself, has become a major force, and there's nothing they can do. So it's all a show. So when the show is over, they'll go home. That's
why are they
what
so
it's
happy
for.
to? Sorry, why are they so happy to sacrifice young kids though? Because it was essentially how I remember it. It was essentially children, and I think they even paid like some money anyone who goes towards that border section and I don't know, attacks it or throws rocks at it. I just don't understand why those I mean, you obviously do, and I have seen like these videos where they train children to do like these army exercises.
Yeah.
But why are they so
From
mentally and psychologically
5-year-old.
willing? Yeah.
Well, this goes to the fact that in Arab culture, and generally in the Middle East, and not only in the Middle East, in many places, the individual is not as important as the collective.
Oh, now you're talking my language.
Yeah. So if the collective is more important, then of course sacrificing a few individuals for the collective is no question. It's like you would sacrifice a finger to save your whole body, right? And that's the same way they view it. The collective is the body. So yeah, they'd sacrifice one finger to save the whole body, or to fight the war, the struggle, the resistance.
But still, it's children. I don't understand that part.
Yeah, but it's a great tool because dying children are wonderful for the media. So that's why they use them. It's a tool. So the whole thing is a show, and the best show, you use children and animals, right? It's a famous Hollywood thing.
It's children and old people, I think.
I know. I think it's
like some old people or something. I don't know.
No. It's children and animals. It's a famous thing. Okay. Is that it was, I can't remember which Hollywood star said it, that if you do a film with a child or an animal, that's the end of your career. Because the child
it's difficult
steals
to work.
The show,
Yes,
or the animal steals the star.
Oh, I see.
The limelight, and you become an accessory. So the actor becomes an accessory. Everybody's focused on the child, on the animal. The actor could be amazing, but if the main character is a dog, and the dog wags his tail, the audience starts crying, and they don't need to do much, and the actor needs to do a lot of work. So yeah, that's what they use. They use children as an accessory in a propaganda war, which the Western journalists love to take part in.
By the way, can I just ask, did you develop your dark humor over time, or is it just like a sort of defense mechanism to what's happening in Israel?
I don't know. I don't know.
Just comes naturally, yeah? just the region, that's how it is? We laugh at sad things?
Well, I mean, you have to laugh at everything. I was arguing, I don't know if you know this character, Duvid. He's got a YouTube channel. And we were arguing. He decided that laughing, I think he's a bit strange himself, but that's okay. I mean, it's okay to be a bit strange and unusual. Great people have been unusual. But he says that laughing is degenerate. Jokes are
degenerate, really?
Yeah, jokes are degenerate and humor is degenerate, and all it is it's a way to reduce any serious discussion into,
I see the context
of a battle, but but he's kind of missing the point. It's like humor is just another way you communicate. You know, I could criticize you much more gently if I do it, you know, jokingly, and you take it that way as well. So you wouldn't be offended or as offended. So we use it as a way to communicate, you know, and to make other people have a better time around us. So I don't see what the problem is with him. I think he's a bit.
I
think it's important to laugh.
Yeah, I agree. I think it sounds like in his context, it's he was probably trying to have a serious discussion about stuff he cares about with someone else, and they didn't wish to.
No, he
just
wasn't.
In general.
Yes. Yes. He was trying to have a serious discussion about the fact that humor is degenerate, and I even gave him example of humor in the Bible because he's religious, and even that didn't dissuade him. So there you go.
The other reason why I wanted to bring you on is perhaps for some training or some education. What would you normally do if you run into, as you mentioned earlier, liberals who say that Israel is an apartheid state and thousands of Palestinian, I assume children, die every day in it?
Well,
I'm not joking. It's not an exaggeration.
Okay, so let's start with the numbers. Israelis and Arabs have been fighting for about 100 years now. The number of dead on the Palestinian side, I think, is around 35,000. And the number of dead on the Israeli side is about 30,000. So that is what, if you compare 100 years, and we've got less than 100,000 dead, compare it to any other war, and normally a war that lasts 6 months has more people dead than this. So as far as, you know, thinking that we are in some kind of incredible deadly war where thousands of people are dying, it's not. I mean, it's very sad that those people die on both sides. Of course, it's terrible. But in the if you put it in context of other wars, I mean, in Iraq between 2003 and 2005, I think nearly 1 million people died. The war between Iraq and Iran in the 80s, I think over 1 million people died on each side, and so on. So the Israeli-Arab conflict is quite small in comparison to these things. So I think overall Israel has managed to keep it, relatively peaceful for all sides. So no, thousands of Palestinians aren't dying every year. I mean, I can look at the numbers every day. No, not even every year. No. I mean, let's have a look. Israeli-Palestinian casualties. It's normally dozens. Sometimes you get hundreds when there's a conflict. So okay, here we go. I found the stats. So it's from 2000. So 2000, there were about less than 300. The year after it was 500. The year after it was 1,000. Then it was 500. Then it was 700. Then 200, and so on. A few more years in similar numbers, and then it dropped. Where like 2010 it was 82 or 120, or another year it was 40, and another year it was 100.
So it's getting more peaceful, in fact.
Yeah. When Bibi came to power, fewer Palestinians died. Except in 2014 when they decided to attack Israel, and Israel responded. So they actually attacked Israel in a very peaceful time, comparative to previous periods. Also, the number of Israelis that died has dropped as a result. But if we're just talking about Palestinians, then when Bibi came to power, there were 4-5 years who were a bit like before, and then it dropped. From 2010, it dropped. And of course, when Trump was in power, it's very peaceful. if you look at the stats. So that proves my point. And number of children killed also, when Trump was in office, is the lowest number of children killed. When Obama was in power, it's a mixed picture. Some years were pretty good, some years were worse. But even in the worst year, in the last 20 years, 560 children were killed in 2014. That's the worst year on record, I believe. So it can't be thousands every day. And
Okay.
for example, 2010, 15 children were killed. Now, people have to remember that the Palestinians do not make any effort to protect its citizens when it starts attacking Israel. So that is a war crime, as far as I know. So if the Israeli government decides to attack some other country, one of its responsibilities is to defend its citizens from a counterattack. So Israel, like most countries, builds shelters. They have sirens. They have text messaging to warn you that your area might be attacked. They have a whole bunch of things to deal with it. The Palestinians make absolutely no effort, zero, like none. In fact, they do the opposite. They do the opposite, yeah. They do the opposite. They use public areas in order to position the rocket launchers.
Yeah.
And the only Israel can stop those attacks, those rocket attacks, is to bomb the rocket launchers themselves. So Israel doesn't gain anything from hitting any people, because it's the people themselves can't do damage to Israel, and it's those weapons that can damage Israel. So they only want to hit those weapons. But when they put those weapons in a school or hospital or hotel, or the AP building in Gaza, then Israel has no choice. They have to stop the rockets from falling on Israeli citizens. That's their duty. That's the government's duty to the citizens. And that's what the citizens demand. Please make the rockets stop. And the only way to stop them is to hit those targets, which they, on purpose, they put them where people will be hurt. So Israel uses this system where they warn them. A few minutes before they bomb, Israel actually warns the people, please run away, we're going to bomb your area. Sometimes there's been reports that Hamas do not let them leave. So they know they're going to be bombed, they want to run away, but Hamas stops them from running away. So if Hamas made any effort to protect those people from being killed, very few would be killed, if any. I mean, Israel doesn't attack Gaza for no reason. It's only when they bomb us and rocket us or launch missiles at us that we have to respond. And normally the Israeli government doesn't even want to respond. You know, they don't really want it, but there's pressure from the citizens, from the people. Yeah. It's like, yeah.
I just want to add that the population in Gaza, they have their own elections. They have their own police, judges, politicians. They're not really a part of Israel per se. It's like a quasi their own little area.
It's already a state. It's just not recognized, but it effectively is a state. It's got everything to be a state, borders, everything. It doesn't have an army that actually controls the borders. That's the one thing it doesn't have. But it has an army inside. So if it learned to behave like a normal country and stop bombing everybody around it, then they could have had a state long ago. But they're not functioning in a way that anyone can deal with.
The reason why I mentioned the state is because I think the state is morally responsible to protect its own citizens.
Yeah, they are.
And the Israeli government is morally responsible to protect its citizens, and the people in the government in Gaza, or the government in the Palestinian territories or whatnot, is responsible for the lives and taking care of the lives of its own citizens. That it's its moral duty. And it seems like, as we were mentioning, that they're doing the complete opposite and then blaming Israel for doing it.
Well, that's it. They do it on purpose because it plays into the hands, right? They don't care about the children; they care about the collective. And and also a lot of these photos are fabricated, right? They use stills from movies and tell them, "Oh, look at this! What the Israelis, they killed this child and stuff." and then they have like teddy bears and dolls that they spread around any ruin they can find, and they claim that it's Israelis, kill children and all this, but there can't be so many. And sometimes we catch them, like this photo is from a movie, this photo is from Syria in 2005, and you claim it was Gaza 2014, but the media publishes it. There was a famous case where they actually drew smoke clouds to show that Israel is bombing Beirut, I think it was, and it was all false. And then the whole media, the BBC, CNN, everybody published it, and then they said, the reason the photo was doctored is because the guy who sent it was working in the dark. That was the reason they gave. You can look it up. He was working in the dark. I don't know why working in the dark makes you draw smoke clouds in the sky, but that's the effect working in the dark apparently has on BBC journalists.
I do remember one time during the time I mentioned about the riots around the fence, I saw a picture on Twitter that and a boy holding his forehead. The forehead was bleeding somewhat, and he's crying, and the thing in the picture said, this is like in the middle of his forehead, he's holding his hand and it's like bleeding, and the picture said a sniper shot this boy and that's why he's bleeding. And I'm thinking to myself, if a sniper had shot the boy in the forehead, that couldn't be right.
I don't know what they're claiming. I mean, the New York Times had
because it would be like I guess it's difficult to express, but if it was a bullet hole in his forehead, he wouldn't be holding it with a tissue. It would be something else.
Yes. I mean, they fabricate so much stuff people don't realize. They showed a photo of an Israeli policeman who saved an American tourist from an attack by Palestinians, right? And the article said that this was a Palestinian attacked by Israeli police. So they show up an Israeli policeman with an American tourist, a kid who was like, 14, 15, who was attacked by Palestinians. This Israeli policeman actually saved him. He was bleeding. He was obviously attacked quite severely. And the New York Times published a photo claiming that this Israeli policeman attacked a Palestinian kid. And this was in the front page, and this went around the world. It was a famous case. You can look it up. I think his name was Tuvia Gossman or something like this.
I think you showed it on your show, didn't you?
Yeah.
Or with your friend, academic agent?
Yes. There's many cases like this. It's just endless. There's like decades of lies. Everything people hear about Israel is just imaginary. It's in the heads of journalists.
So what do we do?
Well, people already know that the media has become the enemy of the people. I mean, Trump was right. They are...
Sorry, dial it a little bit back for a second. What do we do with regards to the bad impression of Israel?
I think we just carry on telling the truth. And what else can we do? We just carry on telling the truth. I think people believe the media less and less. And the facts are with me. Like, I don't need to lie. So it's the easiest path to take. The truth is consistent. It's when you lie that things are gonna...
You have to remember you lied?
Well, if you lie, you kind of break reality. So at some point it's gonna catch up with you. Things are not gonna be consistent.
Now you are talking my language.
Yeah.
Second time.
So I just try to tell the truth. People can come and check. They can see the stats. It's published online. If they think that thousands of Palestinians are dying every day, just look it up and you'll see. I mean, these are figures published by the Palestinians themselves. So, you got the Palestinian figure, you got the UN figure, you got the Israeli figures. So sometimes Israel will say, it was 107, and the Palestinians said, well, no, it was 123. Okay, but it's not 1,000. Okay. And not a day. I'm talking a year, not a day.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining the show. We very much appreciate the insight and the knowledge of the region. And
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for inviting me. I mean, like, as you know, we don't get an opportunity to tell people the truth. Normally, it's just other people discussing us and telling people lies about Israel. So it's nice. This is the reason we started our channel. Maybe I can promote my
go ahead.
channel. It's called the Juminati.
Why is it called the Juminati? Please
It's a
tell
joke.
us.
It's a joke about all these conspiracies about the Jews in Israel. You know, so
Is it
that's why
right-wing or Palestinian conspiracy theories?
they're all the same. There's no difference between them. They think they're so original. They're all repeating the same cliches that were generated by the Soviets in the 60s, and the far left and the far right, they're just repeating this. They don't really know that they have been subverted. But
So is this the horseshoe theory, or not so much?
without getting into a theory, just reality, right? If you see someone who claims to be a communist, far left, whatever, telling you some historical fact, quote unquote, and then you go and talk to some hard far right guy and he's telling you the same story, well, I don't know if it's a horseshoe or a shoelace or what kind of contraption is best to describe the political spectrum there, but they're saying the same stuff. So I like to be practical. All these theories and all these academics are giving me a headache. You know, I don't care about the backstory. I just look at what's happening. You know, if you come to attack me, I'm going to defend myself. You know, I'm not interested in your stories.
Sure. And I think what the Mossad isn't telling you is, firstly, he's always listening, and secondly, he also controls the weather. So don't.
We do. We control the weather. We control everything. Literally everything.
So just be good, because we'll figure out if you're not. Sorry, when I mean me, the Mossad.
Yes.
He'll tell me later. Yeah.
Yes. We know everything. We watch everything. We're we're everywhere. We're in your drawer. We're under the bed. We're behind you. We're everywhere.
Oh, so that's the noise. Oh, damn.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Anyway, again,
Nice
thank you
talking
very
to you.
much. Nice talking to you as well. So, bye everyone.
Bye, everyone.